Widow arrives at the abandoned cabin and finds a hungry dog guarding a baby. Aisha had not planned to come here on this day. The decision came quietly, the way most heavy decisions do, without noise or warning. She woke up before sunrise, the house still dark and silent. The cold air slipped through the small cracks in the windows, and the empty space beside her bed reminded her once again that she was alone. It had been 2 years since her husband passed away, yet the pain had not softened. It only changed shape. Some days it felt like a sharp wound, other days like a deep tiredness that never left her bones. Her life had become slow and careful. She worked part-time at a small school, returned home before sunset, cooked simple meals and slept early. Friends had stopped visiting often. They did not know what to say anymore, and she did not know how to explain the quiet weight she carried inside. The walls of her house felt too close, filled with memories she could not escape. That morning, as she sat on the edge of her bed, she felt an urge to leave, even if just for a few hours. The land near the forest had once belonged to her husband's family. There was an old cabin there, unused for years. Her husband used to talk about fixing it someday, turning it into a peaceful place away from the noise of the town. That dream ended with him. Aisha had never gone there alone before. Still, something pulled her toward it now, as if the place was calling her for reasons she did not yet understand. She packed a small bag with water, bread, and a warm shawl. The sky was pale when she locked her door and started the drive. The road grew emptier as she moved farther from town. Trees lined both sides, tall and silent, their branches bare from the season. The forest looked calm but distant, as if it was watching her quietly. Aisha drove slowly, her hands tight on the steering wheel, her thoughts moving between the past and the present. As she turned onto the narrow dirt path leading to the cabin, her phone lost signal. She did not feel afraid, only aware of how alone she truly was. The car tires crunched softly against gravel and dry leaves. When she finally stopped, the cabin stood ahead of her, smaller than she remembered. The wood was dark and weathered, the roof slightly bent, the windows dusty and cracked. It looked forgotten, like a place the world had decided to leave behind. Aisha stepped out of the car and wrapped her shawl tighter around herself. The air smelled of earth and old wood. There was no sound except the wind brushing through the trees. She walked toward the cabin slowly, each step careful. The door was not fully closed. It leaned open just enough to show darkness inside. She paused, unsure whether to enter. Her heart beat faster, though she could not explain why. That was when she heard it. At first it was so faint she thought it was the wind, a soft, broken sound almost like a whisper. She stood still, holding her breath. Then it came again, clearer this time, a weak cry, not loud, not sharp, but filled with need. Aisha's body stiffened. The sound did not belong to the forest. It was not an animal's call she recognized. Her hand trembled as she reached for the door. She pushed it open slowly, the wood creaking in protest. Inside, the cabin was cold and dim. Light entered through the dusty windows in thin lines. The floor was covered in dirt and old leaves. There was no furniture, only broken pieces of wood in the corners. The sound came again, closer now. Aisha took a step inside, then another. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Near the far wall, she noticed movement. A shape rose slowly, standing between her and the source of the sound. It was a dog. Thin, dirty, its ribs visible beneath its fur. Its legs shook slightly, but it stood firm, blocking her path. A low sound came from its throat, not strong, more like a warning made out of fear than anger. Aisha froze. She had never been afraid of dogs, but this situation was different. She could see the dog was weak, yet protective. Its eyes were fixed on her, dark and tired. Behind it on the floor, something small was wrapped in cloth. Then the cry became clear. It was a baby. Aisha's breath caught in her chest. Her mind struggled to understand what her eyes were seeing. A baby, alone in an abandoned cabin, guarded by a starving dog. The baby's face was red from crying, its tiny hands moving weakly in the air. The dog shifted its weight, placing itself more firmly between Aisha and the child. "I won't hurt you," Aisha whispered without thinking. Her voice sounded strange in the empty space. She slowly lowered herself to the floor, making herself smaller. The dog watched her closely, ready to react. Her heart pounded, but not with fear. It was filled with something else, shock mixed with deep concern. She noticed how thin the baby's blanket was, how cold the air felt even to her. She noticed how the dog's body leaned slightly, as if it had been standing guard for a very long time. Aisha opened her bag slowly and took out a piece of bread. She placed it gently on the floor, then pushed it toward the dog with careful movements. The dog did not move. Its eyes flicked toward the food for a moment, then returned to her face. Hunger pulled at it, but duty held it still. "It's okay," she whispered again, tears forming in her eyes. "You're doing a good job." The dog hesitated. After a long moment, it lowered its head and took the bread, eating quickly but quietly. Even while eating, it stayed close to the baby, one paw stretched toward the small bundle as if to protect it. Aisha felt a tight ache in her chest. She thought of her own empty home, the silence that waited for her every evening. She thought of the grief she carried, the feeling of being left behind. In this broken cabin, she saw a reflection of her own loneliness, but also something stronger, loyalty, care, and hope struggling to survive. She reached out slowly and touched the baby's blanket. The baby cried softer now, sensing warmth. Aisha wrapped her shawl gently around the child, careful not to scare the dog. The baby's small body felt cold, lighter than it should have been. Aisha swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, unaware of the moment unfolding inside the cabin. Aisha sat there on the cold floor, a stranger to both the baby and the dog, yet somehow connected to them in a way she could not explain. She did not know how long the baby had been there. She did not know who had left the child behind, but she knew one thing clearly: she could not walk away. In that quiet, forgotten place, something had begun to change inside her. The weight of her grief did not disappear, but it shifted. For the first time in a long while, her heart was not only remembering loss, it was responding to life calling out for help. And as the baby's cries softened and the dog finally relaxed, Aisha realized that this visit to the abandoned cabin was not an escape from her pain. It was the beginning of something she never expected. Aisha stayed sitting on the cold floor for a long time. Her legs felt stiff, but she did not move. The baby was still crying softly, small sounds that rose and fell like weak waves. The dog had finished the bread but did not step away. It stayed close, its body curved slightly toward the child, as if it was ready to protect again at any moment. The cabin felt colder now, or maybe Aisha was only noticing it more. She slowly looked around the room. The cabin had nothing useful inside. No blankets, no food, no heat. The windows let in thin light, but they also let in the cold air. Dust floated quietly in the sunlight. It was clear that no one had lived here for a long time. Aisha wondered how long the baby and the dog had been here. One night, two, maybe more. The thought made her heart feel heavy. She spoke softly again, keeping her voice calm. She did not want to scare the dog. "I need to help the baby," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The dog lifted its head slightly. Its ears moved, listening. It did not growl this time. It simply watched. Aisha carefully shifted closer inch by inch. The baby's face was red, the lips dry. The crying had grown weaker, turning into small, tired sounds. Aisha had helped care for children at the school where she worked, but this was different. This baby was alone, cold, and hungry. The feeling pressed deep into her chest. She opened her bag again and took out the bottle of water. She knew she could not give water to such a small baby, but she gently touched the baby's lips with her finger, just to calm the child. Then she checked the cloth wrapped around the baby. It was old and thin, barely offering warmth. Aisha slowly wrapped her shawl more tightly around the baby, covering the tiny feet and hands. The baby quieted a little, sensing the warmth. The dog shifted closer. Aisha paused, holding her breath. The dog sniffed the air near her hands, then looked at the baby. Its body relaxed slightly. It did not seem angry anymore. It seemed tired. "You've been very brave," Aisha whispered to the dog, "but you don't have to do this alone now." The dog did not understand her words, but it seemed to understand her tone. It lowered itself to the floor, still close to the baby but no longer standing guard. Aisha noticed how weak it looked now that it was resting. Its sides moved quickly as it breathed. It had given everything it had to protect the baby. Aisha's mind raced. She needed to get help, and quickly. But she could not leave the baby alone, not even for a few minutes. The phone had no signal here. She remembered the small village not too far from the forest road. It would take time to reach it, but it was the only option. She carefully lifted the baby. Her hands shook at first, but she held the child close to her chest, the way she had seen mothers do. The baby cried once, louder, then settled against her warmth. Aisha felt tears rise in her eyes again. The feeling of holding a life so small and helpless awakened something deep inside her, something she had kept closed for a long time. The dog stood up slowly as she moved. It watched her closely, unsure. Aisha spoke gently, keeping eye contact. "I'm not taking the baby away," she said softly. "I'm helping." She reached into her bag again and took out the rest of the bread. She broke it into smaller pieces and placed them on the floor. Then she backed away slowly, giving the dog space. The dog hesitated, then began to eat, weaker now but trusting her enough to focus on food. Aisha moved toward the door with careful steps, the baby held securely against her chest. She paused at the doorway and looked back at the dog. For a moment she thought it would stay behind, but after finishing the bread, the dog followed her, staying close to her legs. Outside, the cold air hit her face. She walked quickly to the car, opening the door with one hand. She placed the baby gently in the passenger seat, wrapping the shawl more tightly and adjusting the seat to keep the child safe. The dog jumped into the back seat without hesitation, curling up as if it finally felt safe enough to rest. As Aisha started the engine, her hands were shaking. Her heart beat fast, not from fear now, but from urgency. She drove carefully down the narrow road, one eye on the path ahead, the other checking the baby again and again. The baby slept lightly, small breaths rising and falling. When she reached the main road, her phone signal returned. Aisha pulled over and immediately called for help. Her voice shook as she explained the situation. The person on the line spoke calmly, asking questions, giving instructions. Aisha followed them carefully, nodding even though the person could not see her. She was told to bring the baby to the nearby health center. Aisha did not waste a second. She drove faster now, but still careful. The dog lifted its head from time to time, watching her and then looking at the baby, as if checking that everything was still okay. At the health center, people rushed to help. The baby was taken gently from Aisha's arms and checked by trained hands. Aisha stood nearby, feeling suddenly empty without the small weight against her chest. The dog stayed close to her legs, leaning against her as if for comfort. The baby was given warmth and care. Aisha answered questions the best she could, explaining how she had found the child and the dog. People listened closely, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others wiping their eyes quietly. As time passed, Aisha sat on a bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She watched through the glass window as the baby slept peacefully now, no longer crying. Relief washed over her, but it was mixed with many other feelings. Sadness for whoever had left the child, gratitude for the dog who had protected the baby, and a strange sense of connection she could not explain. The dog lay at her feet, finally asleep. For the first time since entering the cabin, it looked calm. Aisha gently touched its head. The dog did not wake. She thought about her life before this day. The quiet house. The long evenings, the feeling that something was missing though she never knew what it was. Now, sitting in a small health center near the forest, she felt different. Tired, yes. Shaken, yes. But also awake in a way she had not felt since her husband passed away. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know where the baby came from or what decisions would be made. But she knew that this moment mattered. That abandoned cabin had changed her path. She had gone there to escape her memories, but instead she had walked into someone else's story, and somehow it had become part of her own. As she sat there, waiting, Aisha looked down at the sleeping dog and then back at the baby through the glass. A quiet promise formed in her heart, though she did not say it out loud. Whatever happened next, she would not forget this day, and she would not walk away easily. The hours passed slowly inside the small health center. The lights were bright, and the air smelled clean and sharp. Aisha sat quietly, her back against the wall, hands resting in her lap. Every few minutes, she looked through the glass window at the baby sleeping peacefully on the bed. The rise and fall of the baby's chest brought her comfort. Each breath felt like a small victory. The dog stayed close to her feet, its body curled and still. From time to time, it lifted its head and looked toward the baby's room, then settled again. It trusted Aisha now. That trust felt heavy and precious at the same time. A nurse finally came out and spoke gently. She said the baby was stable but very weak. The baby had not eaten properly for days. Warmth and care were helping, but more time was needed. Aisha nodded, listening carefully. She asked if the baby would be okay. The nurse smiled softly and said they believed so. Relief washed over Aisha, but it did not remove the tight feeling in her chest. Questions kept circling in her mind. Who was the baby's mother? Why would someone leave a child in such a place? Was there anyone looking for this baby right now? Later that day, a local officer arrived. He asked Aisha to explain everything again. She told the story slowly, starting from the moment she arrived at the cabin. She spoke about the weak cries, the dog standing guard, and how neither the baby nor the dog had food or warmth. Her voice shook at times, but she did not stop. The officer listened carefully, writing notes. He explained that they would try to find the baby's family. Notices would be sent to nearby villages. People would be asked if they knew anything. Until then, the baby would stay under care. The dog could remain at the center for now. Aisha thanked him. When he left, she sat back down, suddenly feeling very tired. Her body ached and her eyes burned from lack of rest. Yet she did not want to leave. The idea of going back to her empty house felt wrong now. As night came, the center grew quieter. Some lights were turned off and footsteps became rare. Aisha was given a blanket and allowed to stay. She lay on a bench near the baby's room, her coat folded under her head. Sleep came and went in short moments. Each time she woke, she checked the baby through the glass. At one point during the night, the baby cried softly. Aisha stood up immediately, walking to the door. A nurse came in before she could step closer. Aisha watched as the baby was comforted and fed. Slowly, the cries faded again. Aisha exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. The dog woke up and stood beside her. It pressed its head against her leg. Aisha bent down and gently stroked its back. "We're okay," she whispered, though she was not sure if she was saying it to the dog or to herself. Morning light entered through the windows, soft and pale. Aisha had not slept much, but her mind felt clearer. The baby looked better now, color slowly returning to the small face. When the nurse allowed it, Aisha was able to sit beside the bed for a moment. She did not touch the baby, only watched closely. The baby opened its eyes briefly, then closed them again. That small movement filled Aisha with a deep, unexpected emotion. Later that day, villagers began to arrive. Some had heard about the baby, others came out of curiosity. A few whispered among themselves. Aisha stayed nearby, listening quietly. She watched faces carefully, hoping someone would step forward with answers. One woman stood near the door for a long time. She looked nervous, her hands twisting together. Her eyes stayed fixed on the baby. When the officer noticed her, he approached gently. The woman spoke in a low voice. Aisha could not hear the words, but she saw the woman's shoulders shake as she spoke. After some time, the officer returned to Aisha. He explained that the woman believed she knew who the baby's mother was. A young woman who had been struggling, alone, afraid, and without support. According to the neighbor, the young woman had given birth recently and had been very weak. No one had seen her for days. Aisha's heart sank. She imagined a frightened mother, desperate and unsure. The story was no longer about abandonment alone. It was about fear, hardship, and impossible choices. Search efforts began immediately. People went out to look for the mother. Aisha waited, her hands clasped tightly. The dog remained by her side as if sensing the tension. Hours passed. Finally, news came. The young mother had been found in a small rented room near the edge of town. She was alive but unwell. She had not meant to disappear forever. She believed the cabin would keep the baby safe until she could return with help. She trusted the dog more than herself in that moment. When Aisha heard this, tears filled her eyes. She felt no anger toward the mother, only sadness and understanding. Life could push people into corners they never imagined. The mother was brought to the health center later that evening. She looked tired and thin, her eyes filled with fear and guilt. When she saw the baby through the glass, she broke down quietly. Aisha watched from a distance, giving her space. The officer explained that the mother needed time to recover. Decisions would be made carefully, with the baby's safety as the first priority. Until then, temporary arrangements were needed. That night, Aisha returned home for the first time since the day before. Her house felt different now, still quiet but not as empty as before. She fed herself, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep did not come easily. Images kept returning to her mind. The cabin, the dog standing firm, the baby's small cries. She realized something important. She did not feel like a visitor in this story anymore. She felt involved, connected, responsible in some way. The next morning, Aisha went back to the health center early. She brought food for the dog and warm clothes for the baby. The staff smiled kindly at her. They saw how deeply she cared. Over the next few days, Aisha visited often. She spoke gently to the mother when allowed, offering support without pressure. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes the mother cried. Aisha listened without judgment. The dog regained strength quickly. Its fur began to look cleaner, its eyes brighter. Yet it never left the baby's side for long. Even when sleeping, it stayed close. Aisha noticed how the baby calmed when she was near. The baby slept better when Aisha spoke softly. These small things stirred emotions she had kept buried since losing her husband. She felt warmth growing where there had only been ache before. One afternoon, the officer spoke to Aisha privately. He explained that the mother needed long-term support and recovery. It might take time before she could care for the baby properly. They were looking for temporary care for the baby during this period. Aisha felt her heart race. She did not speak immediately. The words stayed heavy in her chest. Temporary care meant someone stepping forward, someone willing to take responsibility. That night, Aisha sat alone again, thinking deeply. She remembered her husband's kindness, his belief in helping others. She remembered the emptiness that had followed his absence. She thought about the baby's quiet breaths and the dog's loyalty. For the first time since her loss, she felt fear mixed with hope. Fear of change, fear of responsibility. But also hope, real, strong hope, that her life might still have meaning beyond grief. She did not make a decision that night, but she knew something had shifted inside her. The path ahead was no longer empty. And whatever choice she made next would shape not only her life, but the lives of those who had already changed her heart forever. Days passed, and Aisha's routine changed completely. Every morning, she woke up with a clear reason to move forward. She prepared food, packed warm clothes, and drove to the health center without delay. The quiet sadness that once followed her everywhere slowly stepped back, making room for concern, care, and responsibility. The baby was gaining strength. The small hands moved more, the eyes stayed open longer, and the crying was no longer weak. It was a healthy sound now, a sign of life pushing forward. Each time Aisha saw this, her heart felt lighter. She never rushed in or crossed boundaries. She simply stayed close, offering help when allowed and stepping back when needed. The young mother remained under care. Her body was healing slowly, but her emotions were fragile. Guilt sat heavily on her face. Sometimes she avoided looking at the baby, afraid of judgment or rejection. Aisha noticed this and chose her words carefully whenever they spoke. One afternoon, Aisha sat beside her, holding a cup of warm tea. They did not speak at first. Silence filled the space, but it was not uncomfortable. Finally, the young mother spoke in a quiet voice. She said she never wanted to leave her child. She said fear made her do things she never thought she would do. She trusted the dog because it had stayed with her through her hardest days. She believed it would not abandon the baby. Aisha listened without interrupting. She did not offer advice or opinions. She simply listened. When the woman finished speaking, tears rolled down her cheeks. Aisha gently placed the cup on the table and sat closer. "You protected your child the only way you could at that moment," Aisha said softly. "That does not make you a bad mother." The young woman looked at her, surprised. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry openly. Aisha stayed with her until the tears slowed. Meanwhile, discussions continued quietly among officials and caregivers. The mother needed time and support. The baby needed steady care. Temporary arrangements were still necessary. The question remained, who would step forward? One evening, the officer asked Aisha to speak privately. They sat in a small room with a window facing the trees. He explained the situation carefully, without pressure. The baby could not stay in the health center for long. A safe home environment was needed. The mother agreed that temporary care would be best while she recovered and worked toward stability. Aisha felt the familiar racing of her heart. She had known this moment would come. She took a deep breath before answering. She did not speak quickly. She thought about her quiet house, her late husband's kindness, and the unexpected warmth that had entered her life. She agreed to help. The decision did not feel sudden. It felt like something that had been slowly forming since the moment she heard the first cry in the cabin. Still, the weight of it settled heavily on her shoulders. Responsibility was no small thing. But neither was walking away. Preparations began. Officials visited her home to ensure it was suitable. Aisha cleaned and rearranged everything with care. She placed a small bed near her own room. She bought simple baby supplies, choosing them carefully, one by one. Each item made the situation feel more real. The dog was included in every discussion. No one questioned its place. It had earned it. The dog followed Aisha everywhere now, calm and alert. It slept near the door at night and near the baby's space during the day, always watchful, always gentle. The day came when Aisha brought the baby home. She held the baby carefully as she walked into her house. The rooms no longer felt empty. They felt ready. The dog entered behind her, paused, then lay down near the baby's bed as if it had always lived there. The first nights were challenging. The baby woke often. Aisha felt tired, but she did not feel alone. Each small task carried meaning. Feeding, rocking, whispering gentle words, it all felt important. She spoke softly to the baby, even when the baby could not understand. She spoke about the trees near the house, about quiet mornings, about safety. The dog listened too, resting nearby. The young mother visited when allowed. At first, the visits were short and filled with emotion. She stood quietly, watching Aisha care for the baby. There was fear in her eyes, fear of losing her place. Aisha noticed this and made sure to include her whenever possible. She encouraged the mother to hold the baby, to speak, to connect. She never acted as if the baby belonged to her alone. She understood that this situation was shared, delicate, and temporary. Slowly, the mother grew stronger. Her posture changed. Her voice became steadier. She began asking questions, learning routines, and preparing for the future. Aisha watched this progress with mixed emotions. She felt happiness for the mother and child. She also felt a quiet sadness growing inside. She did not push it away. She accepted it as part of caring deeply. The community began to notice. Neighbors offered help. Some brought food. Others offered clothes or kind words. Aisha accepted what was useful and thanked everyone sincerely. She did not seek attention, but the story had touched many hearts. Through it all, the dog remained constant. It greeted the baby each morning with gentle movements. It stayed close during visits. It rested peacefully at night, finally free from hunger and fear. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the trees, Aisha sat near the window holding the baby. The dog lay at her feet. The house was quiet, filled with a soft calm. She thought about how life had changed in such a short time. She had gone to the cabin to escape her pain. Instead, she had found responsibility, connection, and purpose. She knew this chapter would not last forever. She knew that someday the baby might leave her arms and return fully to the mother. The thought hurt, but it also felt right. Love did not mean holding on forever. Sometimes it meant caring fully and then letting go. As she looked down at the baby's peaceful face, Aisha made a quiet promise to give this child safety, warmth, and care for as long as she was needed. Nothing more, nothing less. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, a once silent house held life, loyalty, and hope. And for the first time in a long while, Aisha felt that her heart, though still carrying grief, was strong enough to hold something new. Time moved gently after that, not rushing, not standing still. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became months. Aisha settled into a rhythm she had never imagined for herself. Mornings began early, often before sunrise. The baby woke with soft sounds, and Aisha responded without hesitation. There was tiredness, yes, but there was also a quiet joy in being needed. The house changed with the seasons. Sunlight filled the rooms in the mornings. The sound of birds became part of the day. The baby grew stronger, gaining weight and energy. Small smiles appeared, first by chance, then more often. Each smile felt like a gift. Aisha found herself smiling back without thinking. The dog remained a steady presence. It followed the baby from room to room, always calm, always watchful. It no longer showed signs of fear or hunger. Its coat shone, and its eyes were alert but peaceful. Sometimes it rested its head near the baby's bed, breathing slowly, as if guarding a dream. The young mother continued her visits regularly. At first, they were careful and emotional. Over time, they became more natural. She learned the baby's habits, the small signs of hunger, the sounds that meant comfort was needed. Aisha encouraged her gently, stepping back when the mother stepped forward. There were moments of silence between the two women, moments filled with understanding rather than words. They shared something rare now, a connection formed not by choice, but by circumstance and care. As the mother grew stronger, her confidence returned. She found work with help from local support groups. She attended meetings, asked questions, and planned ahead. Each step forward was small but meaningful. Aisha watched all of this with a full heart. Pride and sadness lived side by side inside her. She knew where this path was leading, even if no one spoke about it openly yet. One afternoon, the officer returned to Aisha's home. He sat at the table, speaking calmly. He explained that the mother was now ready to care for her child full-time. The plans had been reviewed carefully. Support systems were in place. It was time to prepare for the next step. Aisha listened quietly. She had expected this moment, yet it still felt heavy. She nodded, her hands folded tightly together. She asked thoughtful questions, not to delay the process, but to understand it fully. That evening, Aisha held the baby longer than usual. The baby rested quietly, unaware of the changes ahead. The dog lay nearby, watching them both. The room was warm, filled with soft light. Aisha spoke in a low voice. Words meant more for her own heart than for the child. She spoke of safety, of kindness, of strength. She spoke of how love could exist even when paths changed. The days that followed were filled with preparation. The mother began spending more time with the baby at Aisha's home. She learned routines in the same space where the baby had grown comfortable. Aisha stayed nearby, offering help but allowing space. On the final day, the air felt different. The house was quiet in a new way. The baby was dressed warmly. The dog stayed close, sensing the shift. The mother arrived early. Her face showed both nervousness and determination. She looked at Aisha, unsure what to say. Aisha stepped forward and gently placed the baby in her arms. For a moment, neither woman moved. The baby looked up, calm and curious. The dog stood, walked closer, and sniffed the baby gently. Then it looked at Aisha. "It's okay," Aisha whispered, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Go on." The mother nodded, holding her child close. Tears rolled down her face, but they were not only tears of pain. They carried relief and gratitude. They did not say goodbye in a dramatic way. There were no big speeches. Only a quiet understanding passed between them. Aisha helped the mother to the door. The dog followed them outside, then stopped. As the car drove away, Aisha stood still. Her chest ached, but she did not regret a single moment. She had given care when it was needed most. That was enough. The house felt empty again at first. The silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. It was softer. It carried memory instead of loneliness. The dog returned inside and lay near the window, watching the road for a while. Then it moved closer to Aisha and rested its head on her foot. "You stayed," Aisha said quietly. She bent down and placed her hand on its head. "You chose to stay." Life slowly found a new balance. Aisha returned to work full-time. Her evenings were quieter now, but they were filled with reflection instead of pain. She kept in touch with the mother, receiving updates and photos. The baby was growing well, surrounded by care. Sometimes Aisha visited them. Other times the mother visited her. The bond between them remained, changed but unbroken. The dog continued to be part of Aisha's life, a constant reminder of loyalty and quiet courage. They walked together often through the same forest paths, past the road that once led her to the cabin. One day, Aisha returned to the abandoned cabin alone. It looked the same, old, quiet, forgotten by many. She stood outside for a long moment, remembering everything that had begun there. She did not go inside. She did not need to. The place had already given her what she needed. As she walked back to her car, she felt calm. Her grief had not vanished, but it no longer ruled her life. It had been joined by purpose, by compassion, by the knowledge that even broken moments could lead to healing. That night, Aisha sat at home, the dog sleeping nearby. She looked around the room and smiled softly. Life had surprised her. It had asked something difficult of her, and she had answered. Sometimes love does not come to stay forever. Sometimes it comes to guide, to protect, and then to move on. And that, Aisha realized, was still love. She turned off the light, feeling at peace. The journey that began with loss had led her back to herself. And in that quiet understanding, she knew her heart would always remain open to hope.